Ladies and gentlemen, yes, welcome back to another edition of the Robbie Basel Show. Robbie Basel here for you. Final episode of the semester here in the dorm room. Hopefully, everyone is getting ready for the holidays. You know, it is cold. It is freezing, just as another way to put it. But what's not freezing is the hot stove, and that is where we are beginning today's episode with, yes, guys, Juan Soto is a New York Met. Yep, that's where we're going with this. You know, I said it on Instagram pretty well. I didn't actually expect him to go to the Mets. I really didn't. And when he signs that contract, 15 years for over three-quarters of $1 billion, which is absurd amount of money. Let me tell you, that is insane. It's about 51 million a year. So it doesn't look that atrocious, but over 15 years, Chad. 15 years. Think about that real quick. When this contract ends, I will be 30, 35 or 36, around that number. That's absurd. Like, it doesn't seem real. And we'll talk about we'll rub some salt in the wounds for the Yankees. Don't worry, we'll do that in a minute. But let's talk about the significance of the move first for the New York Mets. They needed a bat, another bat in case Alonso leaves. They need consistency, they need something different. And what does Steve Cohen do? Throws all that money at one player. I love it. Years ago, we were some people other than I did not do this, but some people are hyping up this big acquisition of Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. This move is different, and let me tell you why. Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer are on the back end of their careers, signing a ridiculous contract with the Mets. Juan Soto is not 30 yet. In fact, at the end of this contract, he'll only be about 42 or 43 years old. So the back end of the contract, I don't think that's where ownership is really worried about. It's the start, and they want to be aggressive. The Mets want to go out and win championships, and they're going to try to do that with the double pivot of Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. I'm all for this. I love it. Does that question some of the other possible moves that the Mets can do? Absolutely. But they needed to make a move to go after, like, to respond to what the Dodgers have done. Because the Dodgers went out and signed Blake Snell a couple of weeks ago, and we've all paid attention to that. They deferred the money because that's just what the Dodgers do. The Mets needed to find a way to respond to that move to be, put themselves in more of the contention race. And they want to contend. And they're doing that with Juan Soto. That's a phenomenal get. I get that years ago would not have been part of my wildest dreams. And here we are with Juan Soto being a New York Met, adding a very talented left-handed bat to this orange and blue lineup. Now, what is the next steps for the Mets before we go into the Yankees? What is the next steps? What are the next steps for the New York Mets? Well, it have to continue to address starting pitching. They signed Clay Holmes to be a starter. And I don't know how I feel about that still. I think they need another. I think they have to re-sign Sean Manaea. I think that'll be a phenomenal move. Re-sign Sean Manaea. Start Senga. It'll be Senga, Manaea, and whoever else you want to put in there. Maybe sign somebody else. I don't know. Like a low tier starter. Oh, they have Montas, Clay Holmes, and Tyler McGill, I guess. Paul Blackburn. I don't know. The middle of that rotation does worry me. The bullpen kind of worries me, and the depth still worries me. Because when you look at position by position, we know the infield if they are able to re-sign people. So your ideal infield would be Alonso. I think it's either Jeff McNeil or Luis Angel Acuna at second. Short is Lindor. Third is Vientos. With right now, it would be Tyrone Taylor, Nimmo, and Soto in the outfield, in no particular order. Catcher would be Alvarez, And on the mound, hopefully day one would be Kodai Senga. Does that team scream contender? Not really. And it's the middle of the rotation that worries me. It's the one or two other holes in the lineup that worries me. That lineup would not beat a Los Angeles Dodgers. That lineup wouldn't go out and beat some of these other big name squads. I would have been more confident if they got a Willy Adames, but of course, Willy Adames went to the San Francisco Giants. The Mets need one or two more pieces to really solidify what they're trying to do. And who are those pieces? You got to re-sign Alonso. I think that's the first task. And if you can't get him, you can go out and get Christian Walker. But it's gonna have to be another outfielder, another more depth in the outfield. Or do you throw Brett Beatty at third and move uh Angel Acuna or Vientos to the outfield? You could put Jeff McNeil in left. I wouldn't be opposed to that. The lineup's not bad. It's really rock solid. Imagine a 2-3-4 of Soto, Lindor, and Alonso. That is disgustingly good. That is gross, chat, for how good that is. Actually, we'll go from the first four. Nimmo, Soto, Lindor, Alonso, if they're able to re-sign Pete. That is crazy. Never in my wildest dreams, I think a New York Mets team could look this way. You can only dream of it, but now those dreams start to become a reality for the New York Mets as they re-sign, well, they're able to sign Juan Soto to a 15-year contract. And now to the Yankees. Yankees fans are ungrateful. And I've said that time and time before. And time again, they don't realize what they actually have and to be grateful for what they have. They're saying Juan Soto's a traitor. They're saying he's ungrateful, unloyal to the Yankees. And then you realize something. The Yankees made a phenomenal effort in this. You can't deny that. 5 million less by the Yankees, and they get one up by Daddy Steve, and there you go. You cannot deny that the Yankees put in a significant amount of effort to go out and get Juan Soto to re-sign to the squad. You can't deny that. If we were to deny that, they all would be fired tomorrow. The entire front office. But the way the fans are treating this, oh, he went for the money. Oh, he went to the team that's not going to contend. Understand that the Yankees had the easiest road to the World Series I've ever seen. Congrats on beating the American League Central. Like, what the heck? You guys played no contenders. The Yankees played zero contenders and got destroyed in the World Series for that. And all they did was point fingers, and now they lost Juan Soto, and now the fans continue to point fingers. The Mets, on the other hand, barely made the playoffs. True. They went out and beat Milwaukee, who are better than most teams the Yankees face throughout the playoffs. The best team they faced was Cleveland, and Milwaukee's a little underneath Cleveland. I can accept that. The Mets then went out and beat Philadelphia, who are better than Cleveland. The Mets then tried to throw up a fight against the Dodgers, who are better than Cleveland. The Yankees played Cleveland and the Royals. And that's a contender, beating the Royals and the Guardians. Are we sure we're understanding that correctly? That's a contender and the other one isn't? Or one's a future contender? Yes, the Mets are future contenders. And the Yankees say they're contenders, and yet you go out and beat the AL Central twice? Do they want like some old cupcake award for that? You faced the hotshot Royals and the hotshot Guardians, and you beat them up both. And you needed By the way, a Juan Soto home run late in extras to defeat Cleveland. You had to go to extra innings for multiple games against Cleveland, and you call yourself a contender. Cleveland would not have made it past the NLDS. I don't think they would have. They would have lost to pretty much everyone there, including the Mets. They would have lost to that New York Mets team. So I could go after the Yankees softball playoff schedule all I want. But I think this should be a lesson for them. Be grateful for what you have. All they proclaim is, oh, we got robbed by the Astros and this and years ago and this and that and the other thing. Stop complaining. You've had contending teams and you just couldn't get over the hump. Stop with the complaining. You've had your chance to make it to the World Series against real teams. Not saying Cleveland and the Royals aren't real teams, but against real contenders to prove yourselves among the worthy. You've had your chance to prove yourselves and win a World Series after playing two bad meh teams. You had your chances to sign free agents for multiple years. You've had the God Squad that could maybe go out and beat the Dodgers. You had the team and you had your chances to sign Juan Soto back to your squad. And yet, time and time again, it is failure after failure after failure again. That's the theme of them now. It is consistent failure to be able to get themselves where they want to be. If you're a fan of the Yankees, that's what the New York Yankees are. Time and time again, they had their chances and they couldn't capitalize. They did that in multiple playoff games. They've done that with Juan Soto. And now they're trying to fix their mistake of not re-signing Juan Soto by targeting everyone else, which, to their credit, is a phenomenal strategy. The 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 curveball signing for me would that be them getting Max Fried, which I think Max Fried should be on the Giants, but yeah, imagine a Giants front two of Max Fried and Logan Webb. That's a team that can maybe go out and spend more money. Giants. But for the Yankees, they are in like on everyone. I think a perfect signing for the Yankees is Christian Walker. I think that's a great get if they're able to get him because I don't know what the Diamondbacks are trying to do. Apparently, there are like rumors to trade for Cody Bellinger, which would make no sense. I mean, it would have made sense because they would have traded the terrible Jordan Montgomery contract. But I mean, right now, with the way the Yankees are, they have to go out and target more people, more players, because they have to now respond to what the Mets did. Because if the Yankees don't make some big time additions, they are in serious trouble. And I mean serious trouble. I think the Yankees will make some big moves. I won't deny that. But it's not that they need to do them. They have to do them. And if they don't do them, then you could seriously, I will not take that team serious next year. And I don't think many will take that team serious if they don't make that big time move for next year to be able to take that next step after losing Juan Soto. That's where I stand on this. It's a very weird situation if you're a New York fan, because if you like both teams, Juan Soto just went from one New York borough to another. And now people will be singing the Meet the Mets song for like the next day, which I don't mind it. Let's go to another sport. The NFL is a disaster. Before I go into that, I want to apologize to you guys, the viewers, um, for a couple of things. I'll go with this first. I want to apologize for my stuff for the lack of Footy Fridays uploads. There's been a lot of stuff in my schedule that has come up so last minute that I have not been able to film videos. I promise you this week there will be videos, and starting this week or next week, there will be consistent videos. I believe all but 1 week through the end of for the rest of the month. And back in January, there will be consistent uploads. I've been very, very busy on Fridays on and Thursdays, especially with the finals coming up. But once finals are done, I could tell you this, especially if you're a fan of the other Give 'em Five shows, everyone will be back and everyone will be uploading, and we will try to put out the best content for you guys as time rolls on. Because I know Across the River has not been uploading, but they've had a very difficult schedule recently. Um, Speaking of difficulties, I want to, on behalf of the whole team, apologize for Saturday. We were supposed to do Georgia and Texas. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, mainly on my end, and Jacob's end, partially with Wi-Fi, and my end with the laptop, um, we were not able to give you the best performance for the SEC title game. Um, I deeply apologize for that. It's unacceptable to have those type of technical issues in the middle of a big game like that, especially with a broadcast that could have done so well. And for a brand like us, I don't think that's really an excuse. So in the future, I'll do my best to not be in those situations, learn from the mistakes that we made, and we will continue to try and bring the best experience viewing wise and listening wise to you guys. Because you, as the fans and the subscribers of this channel, deserve the best. And we will continue as a brand. And for me, myself, for this show and Footy Fridays, will try to do the best that I can. Well, I will try to do the best I can, and the rest of the team will definitely continue to try to do the best they can, because we have a very dedicated team on camera right now, and we have big projects coming up behind the scenes that we are hopefully going to announce to you guys maybe by the end of this week, with future games, possibly for the college football playoff and basketball and all this other stuff. We have a lot of plans. We're just trying to solidify those plans, and then we'll be able to announce big changes, big news coming to you guys. So, because you guys, as the viewers, like I said, deserve the best. And we, as the whole Give 'em Five family, will try to do our best to give you guys the best because you deserve it, like I said before. Now that that's done, let's talk football. Um, and the reason I'm doing this here is because, and the reason I am not talking NHL or NBA today is because we haven't talked soccer in a little bit as well. And we have some Champions League to talk about. Uh, so let's go into the NFL first. And we had some very interesting games and some interesting storylines. Of course, the Jets bottled it because we are the Jets. Instead of we are the Dubs, like the Diamond Doves from OTE, it's we are the Jets. We suck. That is true. The Jets suck. And they went out and bottled it to the Dolphins because we can't do anything right, apparently. Despite the incredible efforts of multiple players, not to mention the efforts of Aaron Rodgers, over almost 340 passing yards, and Garrett Wilson receiving for over 115, Jets still found a way to lose in overtime to the Dolphins because Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa put on a clinic along with Jalen Waddle, and Dolphins win. That's as simple as that. They're up to 6-7 and are back into the a contending spot in the AFC playoff picture, despite being under 500. The only way the Dolphins reasonably see them making it is if they win out, and it's a very tall order with so many games to go. But a big win for the Dolphins, a big win for the Philadelphia Eagles, who struggled against Bryce Young and the Panthers, but in the end, the Panthers blew it on the last play, and the Eagles win. Big day for Sam Darnold. He was able to lead the Vikings over the Falcons. The Jags beat the Titans, led by Mac Jones. The Bucks defeated the Raiders. But the other big result, other than the Giants putting up 11 points in a game, was Los Angeles and Buffalo. Now, these two put up a combined 86 points. 86. including, I believe, 47 in the second half. And you had big time days for so many players. But when you look at the numbers from a player like Puka Nakua, for 12 catches for 162 yards, I think as a avid watcher of the NFL, you forget to, and this is like how some fans of the Yankees are. You forget to realize how good or how grateful we are for how many talented players that are in our sports. Puka Nakua is one of the more underappreciated ones. And there's a reason for that. He's been injured for part of this. He was injured part of the season. And he puts on a big time show against a big time Buffalo Bills squad, 12 for 162. And he is part of the reason that the Rams were able to go out there and beat the Buffalo Bills. And let's not discount it. Josh Allen threw punches left and right. He had three touchdowns in the air, one on the ground. Two on the ground, correction. He had five combined touchdowns for Josh Allen, and he was sensational. I mean, Josh Allen threw touchdown. No, correction. All six touchdowns, or five of the six touchdowns, or however, no, yeah, all six touchdowns are from Josh Allen. He had over 400 total yards and did not win this football game. That is impressive from Buffalo. Their performance was miraculous. The defense was atrocious, and the Rams were able to capitalize in a must-win game for Los Angeles because they could not go down, be under 500 at this point in the season. For Buffalo, it's not the worst situation ever, but with the Chiefs winning, it does put the Buffalo's run at the number one seed in jeopardy a little bit. But the Rams were able to come out with a big time win at home in Inglewood in a game that, to be honest with you, I never thought Los Angeles had a chance going into. I would have said that on Friday if we had a video on Friday. So big win for the Rams. They deserve it. Big win also for the Niners and the Seahawks. Both of those teams going out and grabbing big time wins. The Chiefs, as mentioned, they got lucky on a doink-it field goal and multiple missed false start penalties because the right tackle for the Chiefs just loves jumping or moving early. Refs are blind. And in the final game, Joe Burrow on and Family Guy are able to, sorry, my God. Wrong show. I know. I'm not a TV show watcher, Chad. I am sorry. Joe Burrow and the Simpsons lead their way against the Cowboys because the Cowboys blocked a punt and then touched it afterwards, and then the Bengals recovered and scored a touchdown. Like, perfect. Perfect. Love that. Also, shout out to the Lions for being the Packers and maybe turning into the Death Star at the end. We'll talk about games to watch out for on Friday. But real quick, we're going to talk college football today, chat. Yes, we are. We are talking the CFP bracket. We're going to pick the bracket right now. And what do I think about the rankings? So let's go over the rankings real quick. We have number one. The number one team in the land is Oregon. That was the correct pick for me. Then it was Georgia, Boise, and Arizona State, the four big, highest ranked conference champions. Then Clemson was the last team in as the ACC champion. They're facing Texas. That was the 5 seed. The 6th seed is Penn State. They're facing 11th seed SMU. The 7th seed is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And they're facing a rivalry game. Well, really, it's a rivalry game for the Battle of Indiana against Indiana, with the winner playing Georgia. So whoever wins that game is screwed. And then we have Ohio State and Tennessee. What do I think about the rankings? Who got robbed? Did anyone really get robbed? My answer is possibly to that question. The only team that you could really throw into this conversation are the Miami Hurricanes. And did the committee do my SMU right to keep them in despite losing the ACC title game? I've thought about this for multiple days, and the answer is I think so. I didn't think SMU really deserved it. They've played a softball schedule. But when you think about it, Miami did this to themselves. They went out and lost to Syracuse. They lost to Georgia Tech. And SMU, who went out and won some big games themselves, I think this dude indeed deserve it more over the Miami Hurricanes. Listen, Cam Ward is great, and he's in the Heisman race for a reason. He's one of the main reasons that this Miami team is even relevant whatsoever. But when you look at Miami's defense, they don't deserve to be there because Miami's defense is the equivalent of the Big 12 of the late 2010s. Their defense is horrible. It is atrocious. It is a dumpster fire, and that is why they do not deserve to be part of the college football playoff. Is because they don't have a defense. If they had a defense, sure, put them in over SMU, put them in over Alabama if Bama was even in the conversation still. But SMU making it, I really thinking about it, don't truly have a problem with it. The biggest problem I have, I don't like that ASU was ranked over Clemson. I don't. What ASU has done, yes, is miraculous. But on paper, I'm not to be fair, I'm not like intrigued about either squad. I think they're gonna get their butts kicked by Texas. When I did my projected rankings on Saturday night, I had Clemson at 4 and Arizona State at 12. But the committee goes the opposite way. And you got to give Arizona State their credit. They won the harder conference. But Clemson, like, they had to overcome adversity. Yes, they had 3 losses, but I think they're the better football team, guys. K. Klubnik, I love K. Klubnik. He threw for over 3,300 yards. They have Maffa, who rushed for over 1,000. Receiving wise, yes, they may not have a guy with over 1,000 yards, but they have multiple players who are averaging over 10 yards of reception, and they have multiple players with over 5 touchdowns. Like they have a very spread out receiving group with Williams and Wesco and Moore and Bringstool, tight end. Stellato also he's been in and out, but he's still serviceable for multiple big teams. Those guys can all play and they're all ballers. So I'm not necessarily like, yes, Arizona State. They're gonna beat Texas. They're gonna or Clemson. I think Arizona State would lose to both of them. Let's be honest with ourselves. But Arizona State, their story being projected last in the Big 12 to having their coach say having kicking tryouts, allegedly, and whatever happened with BYU a couple weeks ago, to now winning the Big 12 and being the 4 seed. They deserve their flowers. But I have Texas running over both of them. It's going to be a mess. It is going to be a literal mess. I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. What else is going on in the playoff? We have Ohio State against Tennessee. Now, Ohio State is ranked 8th, and I don't know if it's the right ranking for them. I think Notre Dame should have been 8th. I think Ohio State should have been 7th, but I think but it's this or that. Really is how I'm going to say it. What I like about this Ohio State team is that they're really, really resilient. But the committee really, I think, really destroyed them because of that loss to Michigan. And I think rightfully so. Yes, it's a rivalry game, but you can't go out there and lose at home to a team that didn't get struggled and lost to Washington. I think it's semi-reasonable. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily have a problem with the Ohio State Tennessee rankings. I think this game is going to be awesome. I think this is going to be the best first round contest, 100%. And with this game being the late game on Saturday, I think like I said, it's going to be a great game. We got 2 great quarterbacks with Maleva, and um, what's his name again? This is how you know he's been irrelevant. Will Howard. Yeah, I almost said someone completely different. But Will Howard against Nico. Will against Nico, I think it's going to be great. Right now, I would say Ohio State would win that game because it's a home game. But listen, at this rate, home games don't matter for some of these teams. We got I think the most undeserving team to be in here left, and that's Indiana. They're taking on Notre Dame. Winner faces Georgia. Now, I like this matchup for Notre Dame the most because Indiana, they've played no one. They played one ranked team. They got their butts kicked by the said ranked Ohio State. And they've played no one else. I think Notre Dame, this is probably the team that they would have easily, like they could beat. This is the easiest opponent you could have gotten in the first round. It's Indiana, not SMU, because SMU is really resilient, but I would have said Indiana. Indiana themselves have a lot to prove. They're going to go to Notre Dame, and I think at Notre Dame Stadium, I think the Irish will take this one by over 20 points. I'm not really counting Indiana in this game. I think they're going to get their butts kicked, and rightfully so, because they've played no one. They haven't proven anything. All they could prove is that they could beat the bottom half teams in the Big Ten, and that's about it. But give me Notre Dame. And then Penn State SMU, I think it's gonna be a really good game. SMU, the newcomers of the group, really, in their first season in the ACC, they make it to the ACC title game, and they're gonna go up against a good Penn State team that was surprisingly more into the game against Oregon than we thought. Because I thought that game could have been 35-0 at one point. But Penn State showed their resilience with Aller and company. I like Penn State. I think that in an early afternoon. Listen, if this was a night game, SMU's losing by 50. But I think SMU has a chance. I don't like their chances um, as much as some others. So give me Penn State. I have them facing Boise, who are also a big surprise this season, are the Boise State Broncos winning the Mountain West. And I think Penn State, who have the easiest path again, because Penn State is another one of those squads who've played nobody and get an easy path. This should have been the route for Texas. I'm serious, because if you want the biggest teams to make it to the last four, Texas should have been six. But you're putting Texas to probably massacre Clemson and Arizona State. I'm picking Texas to beat ASU off the rip. Oregon against Ohio State's a really weird one because I picked Oregon to beat Tennessee. Ohio State to beat Tennessee. We've seen that matchup before. It was a very close game. Ohio State lost by, I think, two. I'm taking Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I like their chances again. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to solidify himself as a true Heisman candidate. I don't think he will win the Heisman, but I think he'll really help himself there. And I think Oregon will advance to the Cotton Bowl to take on Texas and what is a glorified road game for Oregon. Boise against Penn State. I got Penn State winning that game. I think Ashton Jeanty can do all he can, but I think Penn State and their defense are way too good. Give me Penn State. And then Georgia, they're going to be going up against a good Notre Dame team, but this is where I think the Irish the run for the Irish ends. I think their luck will run out. Give me Georgia. So we have Georgia against Penn State and Texas against Oregon. I hate this because I want Oregon, Texas in the national championship. Georgia will beat Penn State. Set the tone. And then I have Oregon beating Texas. Texas in some of these bigger stages. These big stages. Big stages. Haven't been the brightest, and they've struggled under the lights, particularly in some moments in the SEC title game. I think this is where the run for the Longhorns ends for Quinn Ewers and company. Give me Oregon. They'll advance to the national championship to play Georgia. Yes, it's a 1-2, but it makes the most sense. I have Oregon winning the national championship over Georgia. The inexperience could show at points, but I think this Oregon Ducks team has what it takes. I'm taking Oregon to win the national championship. Those are my predictions for the playoff. Let's keep it rolling because we're taking a little bit too long. Premier League, what's been going down? We had a couple of matches this week. We'll talk about the big results from the weekend. Liverpool didn't even play because weather. So the Merseyside Derby got canceled. Newcastle sold. They lost to Brentford, which is literally the most perfect result for Brentford because they now rise to ninth. Big win for Nottingham Forest. They went out and beat United, and United could not defeat Chris Wood and company. Forest, big 3 points for them on the road. Man City go to Selhurst Park and drop points. Last year, the game at Selhurst Park was a 1-0, and Holland got a penalty and scored. This year, Man City get a red card instead of a penalty awarded to them. They get a red card awarded to them, and they drop points to Crystal Palace as it ends 2-2. Big result for Palace. They get themselves out of the relegation race. Aston Villa, they went out and beat Southampton 1-0. Fulham and Arsenal play out a 1-1 draw. Big day for Fulham. They are in a flying state. How about Fulham? They rise up into 10th position after a brief slow stretch for them. They have come back and have gotten points in their last three contests and four of their last five, and stay in or go back into the top 10. How about Tottenham? They went out and played Chelsea, and well, Tottenham blew it. Typical of them. They went out and lost 4-3 in a seven-goal thriller at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Ipswich had a chance for their second win of the season, but they concede two late goals to Bournemouth, and the visitors get all 3 points. And West Ham, in a must-win game for them, they went out and beat Wolves, and Brighton dropped points to Leicester in a very crucial game for the Foxes. Let's look at the standings now. Liverpool, for not playing a game, remain in first. They have a game in hand and are 4 points clear of Chelsea. Behind Blues are Arsenal, who are 2 points behind them. Man City, despite drawing, are in fourth. Nottingham Forest are fifth. They are tied with Villa. Brighton, who with a win would have been, I believe, ahead of Man City. They dropped to seventh. Bournemouth are in eighth. They've been one of the biggest shockers of the season, other than Nottingham Forest. Brentford are in ninth. They're tied with Fulham. Tottenham and Newcastle tied on 20 points in 11th and 12th. Manchester United remain in 13th. They are at 19 points. West Ham are on 18. Everton and Leicester are on 14 points in 14th and 15th. Crystal Palace is behind Leicester, West Ham are 14th. Everton and Leicester are 15th and 16th. Palace is 17th. And there are three teams still with single-digit points. That is Ipswich, Wolves, and Southampton. That is the current Premier League standings. Also, I might be referring to Manchester United as Middlechester United because they can't get out of the middle of the league. They deserve it. Quickly to the Champions League, and this is where we might be. Oh, by the way, I got to do this. Club World Cup draw happened, and the UEFA World Cup qualifying draw comes out on Thursday. We're reacting to both of them on Friday. I'm reacting to both draws on Friday. Because why not do one draw when you can do both draws? You know what I'm saying? So that's what's going on. Champions League, what are we watching out for today? There's a couple of matches here. Match day 6 of 8. Liverpool, they're playing Girona. If they win, they probably are going to get top 8. Big game later today. This is the game I think will be in progress when the video goes out. That's Real Madrid against Atalanta, an Atalanta side that a lot believe can win the Scudetto out in Italy against a Real Madrid team that have been struggling in the Champions League. I think Atalanta maybe get a shock result here, but you cannot go against this Real Madrid side without counting Real Madrid out of the match. Leverkusen and Inter are another good game. By the way, I think Real Madrid and Atalanta draw. I think with the way Atalanta have been playing, give me a draw for them. Leverkusen against Inter Milan. Another big game for an Italian side. They go to Leverkusen in Germany. Give me Bayer Leverkusen at home. I think they're going to have a more comfortable game than people would expect. Give me a 1-0 for Leverkusen. Leipzig are in a terrible spot. They have really struggled in the Champions League this season. They have played 5 games and are on 0 points. They've been the biggest shocker of the Champions League so far, other than Paris Saint-Germain. Give me Leipzig. They need a win. This is where they get it. Give me Leipzig with a big win against Aston Villa at home. PSG are going to beat Salzburg, and that was the other big game. Tomorrow, Dortmund against Barcelona. I think that's a major match for Barcelona. They're defensively, they look terrible, Barcelona. And I think Dortmund can capitalize. Give me a 1-0 in front of the yellow wall for Dortmund. Other big matches. We have Arsenal taking on Monaco, a Monaco side that have been in phenomenal form in the Champions League. Give me Monaco to get a result against Arsenal. Give me a 2-2 out at the Emirates Stadium. And finally, Juventus will have a major hill to climb. They are facing Manchester City in a game where City haven't gotten a win, have only gotten one win in the last month and change. Two teams that are 18th and 20th in the Champions League standings. I think Juventus will be the one to rise to the occasion. Give me a 2-1 win for the old lady as they go out and get a big time result for for the team in black and white. Give me a win for Juventus. Last Champions League matchups, by the way, for around a month. And it's really, really sad to see because I love the Champions League. We all love the Champions League here. Um, so that will do it for today's video here on the Robbie Basel Show. Next week, we'll talk more baseball. We'll bring. I almost forgot that there's one part we didn't film, and that is the reaction to the final race of the F1 season. And next week, we will probably go over my predictions, how accurate I was for the F1 season. So let's talk about it, shall we? We finished in Abu Dhabi, and listen, what a roller coaster of a race it was. We had Lando and Piastri in first and second. They started in first and second. The Ferraris qualified all right. I mean, but I mean, Leclerc was in ninth. Oh no, the Ferraris qualified poorly, and they had to drive something miraculous to go out there and just try and steal the constructors' championship. We had a turn one incident to change the whole race. Lando led after the first corner. He was fine. But Max Verstappen tries to go down the inside to do one of the best overtakes of the season, but doesn't stick it. And he crashes into Oscar Piastri. Piastri later goes on to get a penalty of his own for crashing into the back of Valtteri Bottas, which essentially ended his race. Sergio Perez didn't make it past lap one either. We had multiple DNFs, multiple big overtakes, and multiple phenomenal moves and some strategies that were questioned. But we had a great race for multiple drivers, and we're going to shout some of them out right now before we go to McLaren. We talk about McLaren later. First off, I think we should do a quick thing on Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton drives his final race for Mercedes before going to Ferrari next year. And he qualified poorly. He did get kind of screwed by Kevin Magnussen, but he starts, 16th and finishes in fourth. Spectacular drive by Lewis. I love the strategy. They started him out on the hard tires, tried to play the long game, and it worked. And he was able to eventually get a last lap overtake on his teammate George Russell to finish in P4 in his final race for the brand. I've watched Lewis for multiple years at Mercedes. It'll feel so weird next year to see him in Ferrari colors. But he had a phenomenal race. He's had a phenomenal career with Mercedes, starting with McLaren, going to Mercedes, able to get so many wins for the brand. And it will be so weird to not hear Lewis, it's hammer time anymore. All good things do come to an end eventually. And that's like the one thing I've learned as a viewer of sports, as a commentator. All great things must come to an end eventually. And we're seeing that with Hamilton. I wish Hamilton drove his entire career with Mercedes. It would have only felt correct or right if that happened. But just was not meant to be. And Hamilton will be driving for Ferrari next year. But he's done so many great things. He will be a driver remembered forever as a driver, mainly a driver for Mercedes, and hope maybe at the end of his career, we see him drive for Mercedes again one day. Have to say goodbye to another driver, a couple other drivers today. The next one is Carlos Sainz, who's moving from Ferrari to Williams. I hate it for Carlos. He had a phenomenal partnership, starting at his first big name partnership was with Lando Norris and McLaren. Before that, he drove for what was then Toro Rosso. Goes to McLaren, has the awesome friendship with Lando Norris, and then for the last 4 years he's been teammates with Charles Leclerc, and that one hurt me a little bit too because when you watch Ferrari, I know that people used to always remember Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen as the big name Ferrari pair. But for me, since I started watching, it's always been Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz for the most part. And for the last few years, it's always been those two. And it will be weird to see Carlos go and he'll be driving for Williams. Alex Albon, a team that I think has to take a big step next year. And I think with two very talented drivers, two former Red Bull Academy drivers, I think it'll be very intriguing to see how they do. But for Carlos, he was able to get a couple wins this year, but we knew tensions might have been rising. But he was a phenomenal Ferrari driver. We saw his first win in his career as a Formula One driver, as a member of Ferrari, when he won in Silverstone, I believe a year or two, a couple of seasons ago. But man, it would be very weird to see no Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari colors. Another person that we are saying actual goodbyes to. There's a couple. And it's first off, well, it's Kevin Magnussen who leaves Haas. He's going to I don't remember what the other brand is. He's going, but he came back to Haas after they fired Nikita Mazepin, and he's been with the brand for so long, in both stints as a Haas driver. And it'll be weird to see him go. We're always know him for crashing, and but he's a very solid regular in Formula One. And it'll be very weird to see no more Kevin Magnussen. We're also saying a goodbye from Haas to Nico Hulkenberg, who will try to go out there and save Sauber. He is going to Sauber. He'll be driving with Gabriel Bortoleto next year. It's going to be weird to see Hulkenberg in the black and green or whatever they're calling themselves next year. But I think it's an interesting move for Hulkenberg, a new challenge. I am hoping for all the best for him. But then we have to say, finally, our two goodbye before we go to Sergio Perez, our final goodbyes to Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri. I love Valtteri, like as a driver. He's a fun. He when he drove for Mercedes, and this is how I remember first started watching. Phenomenal Mercedes driver, and he did so many great things for the Mercedes team. Moves to Sauber, so for Mercedes can get their Wonder Boy George Russell in the Mercedes seat. And ever since then, it's been the fall off for Bottas. But he's been not been in a competitive car, and now there's rumors that he could be the reserve driver for Red Bull. I would love that, um, because he'd stay in Formula One, and he's a phenomenal personality. He's a great driver, and it'll be very weird to see him not being in a main car next year. And for Joe, 2 years in Formula One, wasn't in a competitive car when they were Alfa Romeo. He was not in a competitive car when they were Kick Sauber. So it's a career of what ifs for Joe, but I know he'll stay in racing. I know someone will pick him up one day. And Sergio Perez, the often frustrating yet somewhat talented Sergio Perez. I have very mixed feelings on Sergio because time and time again, Red Bull bailed him out because he was a driver of the brand. But this was the time for him to go. Last year, he was in a very competitive car and only won 2 races ahead of Max. This year, he's still in a very competitive car, but couldn't win a race out of the 7 different winners this year. This was the time for it to happen, and Red Bull knew they needed to make a switch. And now we have to say likely goodbye to Sergio Perez. And he's a great driver, drove for a variety of teams over his long career in Formula One. It will be weird to see no Perez, but we'll always remember him for the great crowds that he brings to Mexico City and the few wins he has. He had that very memorable drive out at Sakir, when went from got taken out in the first corner and went from last to first in a phenomenal comeback back in 2020 or 21 or whatever his first race win was. Yeah, no, it was 2020. And when he won for a Racing Point at that time. But he had the wins at Baku. He's won a couple other races, but it will be it'll be weird to see no Sergio Perez, but I think for Red Bull, it is the right move. And now we still have the open Red Bull seat. It begs the question, who's going to be in that Red Bull seat and who's going to replace one of the drivers at VCAR? And I think that is a question we'll have to wait for another time because we still have no information on that still. So for real this time, that is the end of today's episode of the Robbie Basel Show. Formula One is done. We will go over the season in review. Actually, we're not even going to do that yet. We have to talk about McLaren. How could I almost forget about McLaren? They win the Constructors' Championship this year. They almost bottled it. They should have won the Drivers' Championship, and next year it will be a season full of dramatics and controversy for them. Because I think McLaren will have the best car going into next season. I think that's a very big expectation for McLaren. Zach Brown and the work that him and his team have done, and I forget the name of the team principal, but it's all the work they've done, culminating with a championship. They deserve it. They 100% deserved it this season. With what Piastri and Lando have done, they've both put on phenomenal seasons of their own. Lando getting multiple wins, Piastri getting multiple wins. They deserve to be the Constructors' Champion this year. No doubt in my mind. They almost blew it, yes, but they did indeed deserve it. And in the end, they were able to come out and win the trophy. But now it's going to be a time of expectation for McLaren. 2 years ago, when I started doing this stuff, my first podcast episode that I was on right before I made the Robbie Basel show with the original YouTube channel was McLaren have two really talented drivers, but a terrible car. And we don't know. This is the time where they were going to be 17th and 19th back in Bahrain. They struggled entering Miami, and then they started to turn the tides. This was last year, guys. And now they're Constructors' Champions. The turnaround for them has been miraculous, but they have to continue pushing forward. And next year, Lando has to be a contender. And this next year is Lando's true year to be a contender. If they're focusing on Oscar, Lando's going to leave. I think Oscar could stick around afterwards because Lando's been in Formula One for a good amount of time now. This is the year they have. Next year is the year that they have to push Lando to win the championship. If he can't do that next year, then you go to Oscar. But next year is Lando's year. He said it at the Abu Dhabi post race interview. Next year is McLaren's year again. But can Lando Norris get it done? Or will it be Max Verstappen? Or will it be a Ferrari driver like Lewis or Charles Leclerc? I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. As that is the end of today's episode of the Robbie Basel Show for real this time. Make sure to like and subscribe. For now, I'm Robbie Basel saying so long. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone.